Okay, phrases 1. Weak sounds, tempo and breathing. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each question. Now it's the same question. What I'm doing is I'm adding phrases. So what you've got to do is you've got to actually listen and try and follow the rhythm. And you've got to understand that when you're speaking in English, as well as the time and weakening the sound, you've also got to look at how language is constructed. So in English, you've got a phrase like this afternoon. So we'll have a sentence. This afternoon. This afternoon I'm going. So this afternoon is one phrase, and I'm going is another phrase. Another phrase would be to London. So this afternoon I'm going to London. They're three phrases together. We've then got to add them together, and then we've got to think about tempo. So this afternoon I'm going to London. Alright, so that's what we're doing with this activity. So I will say the phrase, I'm going to leave you a gap, and then I want you to copy me. Repeat what I say. Here we go. Do you fancy going? Do you fancy going with me? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch Thor? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch the new Thor film? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch the new Thor film at Cineworld? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me sometime this evening to watch the new Thor film at Cineworld? Alright, so what's happening is, okay, I'm having to think about what I'm saying, and then I'm using phrases like collocations. So the first one is, do you fancy going? Now, do you fancy is not a complete question. So you need to think of language as complete phrases. So when I say, do you fancy going? Actually, that's a correct question. It's grammatically correct. Then if I want to add more information, I say, do you fancy going with me? So, do you fancy going with me? Then I add more information. Do you fancy going to the cinema with me? Now we know where, to the cinema. Then I add more information. Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening? Now we know time, this evening. Then I say, do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch Thor? Now we know what we're going to watch. Then I add more information. Do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch the new Thor film? So now we know it's a new film. The next one, do you fancy going to the cinema with me this evening to watch the new Thor film at Cineworld? Now we've got at Cineworld. And finally, do you fancy going to the cinema with me sometime this evening to watch the new Thor film at Cineworld? Now we've got sometime this evening. So, because this evening has like maybe 3 or 4 hours for an evening. Well, 3 or 4 hours. So, basically, there's lots of things happening here. First of all, I have to weaken the sound. Do you fancy? Because I can't say, do you fancy? And we did this the other day. Do you fancy? Do you fancy going with me? So, do you fancy going with me? Do you fancy going with me to this? Excuse me, the third one. Do you fancy going to the cinema with me? Alright? Do you fancy going to the cinema with me? So now we've got intonation there. Do you fancy going to the cinema with me? Not, do you fancy going to the cinema with me? Like a robot. Okay? Alright, so if you want to listen to it again, great. If not, practice saying them on your own. Good luck.